Hey, you're listening to the Friends in Austin podcast. I'm your host, Justin Talent, and every week I bring you the stories of the people of Austin. Thank you for listening. Hey, what's up? Welcome back to Friends in Austin. This episode is going to be a little different than usual. And on that note, I want to talk about, the upcoming episodes and the format of the podcast as it is, and maybe the format of the podcast as it will be in the future. If you listen to the podcast regularly, of course, you know that, 99% of the episodes are one-on-one interviews with a guest, typically someone in Austin who is a business owner, perhaps a musician, something along those lines. I have a particular interest in entrepreneurship, so I like to interview a lot of people that are into business or entrepreneurs, and I consider artists and people like that entrepreneurs as well, really, because essentially they are. The reason for that is because I just find it really fascinating to be able to, cut your own path in life and be really creative about the way you make a living and be able to kind of answer to yourself. I know that not everyone's into that, and some people prefer doing things more traditionally, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. I've definitely come to learn that it's not for everyone, and it takes a particular personality, and oftentimes, if not most times, it's more work actually to do things your own way. But I've never been afraid of working. I like working. I prefer working a lot, really, if it's something that I care about. I'd rather work a lot on something that I care about than work a little bit on something that I don't care about. So I think that's kind of what draws me to entrepreneurship. Plus, it feels like unlimited possibility, really, because, if you take, for example, the people in the world that make the most money, not that that's the answer to life is making the most money, but it's a measurement of something. Those people are entrepreneurs. There's no other way and to me, I equate money with freedom. So and it allows you to express yourself in a lot of different ways. For example, if you have the money, you can start a new company of any kind that you want. I wish I was there. I'm not at that point, but let's say you are at that point. Those people that are at that point to where they've got tens of millions, hundreds of millions, they could essentially start any company that they want. Like, that's why Elon Musk has a flamethrower company just for shits and giggles, I think that would be really amazing to one day, not necessarily start a flamethrower company, but like take Bill Gates, for example. I know that a lot of these people, you may or may not like them. They have bad press here and there, but anyway, they're examples of some of the richest people that can do whatever they want. Bill Gates gets really into philanthropy and has done a lot of good in the world. I know a lot of people have a lot of bad feelings about him. Whatever, I don't get too much into conspiracies and whatnot. Point is, there's no other career or avenue in life that allows you to have them as much impact as entrepreneurship. There's really nothing. Being a scientist, that'd be really cool. Scientists do a lot of cool shit. You don't really hear about a lot of them, but honestly, they make huge impacts in the world as well. But a lot of scientists, they need funding from either governments or entrepreneurs. Really, sometimes I think that if I wasn't in business, if I started everything over again, I think actually being a scientist would be really cool. Just being in a lab and just discovering something new. Like if you're working on something no one else has discovered before and you've got a team of really smart people and you're just drilling down, and the next day you might discover something that could make a massive impact. Anyway, going back to what I was talking about here, the format of this episode. It's usually been 1 hour episodes with a guest, and it will continue to primarily be 1 hour episodes with a guest. I'm certainly not going to be doing anywhere near even 50% solo episodes, but what I'm saying here is I'm kind of getting a little more loose with the format of the podcast after having done this for about a year. Just, I guess, to keep things entertaining for myself and kind of to keep things more flexible and fun. Like, for example, I was just out of town for a week. I normally have plenty of episodes in the queue. I've had as much as 6 episodes in the queue before, I believe, which looking back on it, is a little too many to have in the queue because things start to get a little, I don't know. I don't like things to be that old. I like them to be like, the perfect queue for me would be 2 episodes because everything's still pretty fresh. And then when you run across a new potential guest, you're not like, sorry, I'm 6 episodes deep. Like, you care more about booking the next person and doing the next interview. But I am going to start doing, I guess, some of these little solo episodes because of the flexibility. So I was out of town for 7 days and I didn't have the queue that I usually have. And it's kind of cool just to be able to, just turn on the mic real quick and make a quick recording. And also, I guess, give you, the listener, a little something different to listen to. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. But what I've come to realize about podcasting really is, and maybe this applies to business in general, is kind of like what's important is keeping the ball rolling and keep it entertaining for yourself. I mean, there's a lot of things I could do for the podcast for the sake of getting listeners, but then it would just be like giving myself a job that I don't want. Why do that? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, this one-on-one episode, just of me kind of giving you some updates here and maybe rambling a little bit. But yeah, I was gone for 7 days, so I thought it'd be cool to do a little quick episode. Just kind of, I guess, a little bit of an update on my future vision of the podcast and what's been going on in my life a little bit recently. So I was in Kentucky. Me and my family lives in Indiana. I grew up in Indiana and moved to Texas in 2013. Lived in Chicago for a year before that to go to a code school. I've talked about some of these things before. You may or may not know these things. But we always go boating in Lake Cumberland in Kentucky every year, and I always meet them down there. Drove this year, and I drove last year. I drove because of COVID. This year I drove because I wanted to bring these 2 jet skis that I got last year. Drove them down there. I had them repaired. I had one of them repaired before I went down there, and they have an impeller, which is basically like I don't know. This is all new to me, but the impeller is basically like the motor, like the prop on a boat, actually, but it's inside the jet ski and it sucks the water in. And the problem with jet skis is they suck stuff in. It's like driving a vacuum on the water. So if you run something over and it's sturdy enough and it goes in the impeller is going to get chewed up and the jet ski's not going to run right. So that happened to one of my jet skis. I didn't know it happened because I wasn't driving that one. I don't know who was on it when it happened. No one told me it happened. And they had to have noticed, but I got it repaired. The guy put a new impeller on it. I drove it down to Austin Jet Ski or Lake Travis. The guy was a really cool dude. I liked him. Anyway, he repaired it. But when I drove, so he repaired it. I didn't pop it back on the water before I left. I thought about it, but I was like, fuck it. I'll just drive down to Kentucky. Surely this guy, he says he repairs hundreds of these every summer because it's a common issue. I'm surely he did it right. I drive it all the way to Kentucky. We pop them in the water, and what do you know? One of them, the one that was damaged, isn't running right. And so I had to get it out of the water. And where we are in Kentucky in Lake Cumberland, it's like a 45-minute drive to town. And you're lucky if you can even find someone. But my stepdad's really on top of shit, and he had some stuff with his boat trailer and stuff that needed done. So he had already had contacted some people, and he's like, yeah, this guy can repair your jet ski. So I take it down there. And because he had a jet ski that actually had a problem starting up, like once out of every 20 times it wouldn't start. So anyway, we drove them both down there, got them fixed, and turns out mine, the dude fixed it perfectly fine. He just didn't bolt it on all the way. So it was coming loose, and when it come out of the water, it would hit the water, and it'd take about a little bit of momentum to get going, and then it would lift something up that was unbolted, and then it would kind of flatten, and you could go. But then if you pop some wake and you hit it in the water again, it would take like another 4 seconds. So it was just not bolted on. But anyway, that's kind of the shit with boating and everything else. Everything's always breaking and you're always getting shit repaired, but they're toys, so it is what it is. Went down there, it was really fun. We just stay at a cabin, we play euchre. We boat during the day, and then we play a lot of euchre at night. It's a very Midwest card game. If you're from the Midwest, you probably heard of it, and you may love it. But yeah, it's a chill vacation. Stopped over in Little Rock on the way there because it's the halfway point. Me and my girlfriend, we've been doing Airbnbs for the stopovers just because we both think Airbnb is really cool. And it's It's typically nicer than a hotel. I mean, Airbnb is not new to most people, but a lot of people have been making money on these layover type stops, which I think are really cool. And we checked out 2 of them on the way, one on the way back, one on the way there, one on the way back, and they're 2 different stopovers. And both of them were stopovers where the person built like basically essentially a tiny house on their own property. And then they even named the stop on Airbnb like the layover, because they're really just targeting, it's like a 1 or 2 night stop or whatever it is for the most part. I'm sure they get some longer bookings for people trying to check out Little Rock, but a lot of it's on the way to something else. And they were both really well done, beautiful little tiny houses. And the benefit of it is if you're staying in a hotel, like we didn't bring dogs this time, but both of us have a dog. So we're often traveling with dogs. And most of these little layovers have little even tiny yards, and you get to skip the whole bullshit of parking, going up to the hotel, getting your key for check-in or whatever. Some Marriotts, whatever, they have like the mobile check-in to where you can just scan it on your door. But even those Marriotts that have supported, I've usually not been able to use it. You got to go up there, you got to check in, you got to go up the elevator, carry all your shit in, go park your car. With these little Airbnb layover stops, you can just park right there, and then you're right there. You carry all your stuff in. You take your dog. There's a yard, etc. It's just a much easier, more convenient layover with nicer accommodations, and it's roughly the same price. Both these stops were only like one was like $115, and I think the other one was like $120. And both my girlfriend and I have been getting more into Airbnb lately as a potential money maker. I've always thought it was very interesting. I Airbnb'd some of my apartments back when Airbnb was pretty new. I would Airbnb my apartment in Austin at SoCo on the lake and during South by. And this was in the good days of Airbnb. Airbnb is still great now, but it used to be really cool in the way that almost everywhere you stayed was someone actually lived there. People hadn't commercialized it yet, but props to the people that commercialized it. And it's totally changed the face of Airbnb and the way that Airbnb works. It's almost like almost every property I visit on Airbnb now is a managed property bought for the sole reason of Airbnb, because Airbnb can be so lucrative. I mean, it's so much more flexible and lucrative than long-term rentals, because if you buy a house and you put long-term renters in there, they're only paying a certain price. They're paying what a reasonable rent would be. Whereas if you're doing short-term rentals, you can charge a lot more, and you can even use the place because you can block off dates and say, hey, like, let's say you owned a home in Austin, you owned a home in San Francisco, and you owned a home in Miami, Florida, and they're all Airbnbs. I mean, and you didn't really live in any of them, but you had a closet with a padlock on in each one of these with, a miniature wardrobe, everything you needed to stay there. You could just fly into the city, dip in, unlock it, boom. You didn't even have to pack. And then you're there, and you can chill in Miami, chill in San Francisco, chill in Austin. And then while you're not there, you're making a lot of money on Airbnbs, and you just pay a property manager to do essentially everything for you. And according to my girlfriend's research, she says this is 25 to 35% is typically what you're going to pay for these property managers, which is a lot. But to take all of that work off your shoulders and just have the property and just be taking in the revenue, and then also having it as a vacation spot, that sounds like a sweet deal to me. We both are more and more interested in this and kind of want to pursue it as an avenue of kind of just growing your net worth. And also it's a lifestyle thing too. I mean, you imagine by the age of 40, you've got 4 properties a person. Maybe you're married, you got 8 between the 2 of you. If you save enough money and you really pursue it, and perhaps you get loans to pull this off, it's really not that unattainable to imagine owning 4 properties. By maybe it's 40 years old, maybe it's 50 years old, whatever it is. And then you're accruing, the house is growing in value. So you have that as an asset for when you want to retire, if you want to liquidate it. Meanwhile, while the house is growing in value, you're renting it out and making a profit on it. Even if that profit's only $1,000 a month per house, which would probably be more than that, even after paying for damages and the wear and tear and the cleaners and blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you do the research and you find the right property, and you're going to get the occupancy that you're looking for, then definitely a really attractive avenue for wealth generation, and kind of like a more minimalist on the go lifestyle where you can go and live and stay wherever you want. You don't always have to be in the same place. Unless you have the money to just buy all that shit and you don't need it, then that would be great too. Which I think is kind of like some people that when they retire that, they can afford 3 or 4 homes and they don't need to rent them out. And that would be nice. I mean, if you don't have to rent them out, great. But I would need to rent them out for a while. So yeah, just thinking more about Airbnb and kind of stuff like that. And on that note, before I left here, I spent hours and hours getting my place ready. Because I'd Airbnb'd my apartments before, which was illegal, but well, I don't know how it's against the terms of the apartment complex, but it was also so new at that time that many of the apartment complexes hadn't cracked down on them. I remember I made, I think, almost $3,000. I'd have to look at my history. It was either $2,500 or $3,000 for like a 7-night stay at my shitty apartment when I was like 25 at SoCo. But then I couldn't fetch those rates anymore after like the Fairmont went up downtown. Like the Fairmont and a couple other hotels went up that made Austin qualify as, I believe the term is like a convention city, to where we had the occupancy to meet that criteria. I noticed that once those hotels went up, I couldn't quite get the prices I wanted for South by Southwest. And I still made some money, but I kind of stopped doing it because I would go camping or I would go do some other thing during that time, and just got to the point where like, hey, I'm not making enough money. Also, being in town during South by is kind of fun. I'll just stick around. But I'd kind of forgotten about Airbnb. And then I moved into this house, and then COVID hit. And I, again, wasn't thinking about Airbnb because Airbnb people were getting fucked when COVID went down by Airbnb's policies and their cancellation policies. They were just letting people cancel willy-nilly on people. And a lot of these hosts that they turned Airbnb into this full-time job, which I think it's great. Airbnb, like I said, it's different now than it was then, and it had more character then, but also I think it's very smart what all these people have done, as everything that I just talked about with Airbnb and making it like kind of like a full-time job or a side hustle for wealth generation. So I'd kind of forgotten about it. And then I was like, fuck it, I'm going to be out of town for 7 days. It's not over, but there's vaccines and people are definitely using Airbnb again. So I just got all my shit together and got things organized in a way that's like you could walk in here and feel like, it meets the standards of an Airbnb. It was always clean, but you got to get all your shit out of the way. Everything's got to be super tight, well organized. But the thing is, and I love doing that stuff. I mean, my house is already fairly well organized. I have several friends that are like, I can never do it. I have too much shit. I still can't believe how long it took me to further organize my shit. But I'm glad that I did because, I mean, I'm the kind of person that likes to know where everything is, and it actually bothers me, just like random bullshit just laying around. My friend KP gives me shit for throwing shit away. He's like, you can't find it because you probably threw it away. But I'm like, yeah, but the fact that I always throw that shit away, you realize like how much time that saves me when finding shit that I actually need. Plus, like if I'm looking at something and I can't quite figure out why I have it, it's much better. The 1 out of 10 times that you're actually going to end up needing it later, you're saving yourself so much stress and time and clutter just by trashing that thing and then be like, oh, fuck, I actually did need that. Now I know what it's for. I'll just buy a new one. And, you can donate it. Sometimes I get on the Facebook group for where I live. I get on there and I just say, hey, like, you can have this. It's free. It's sitting on my front porch. Come take it. And people take it then. Donating and throwing away shit is tricky, though, because some shit, like my jet ski anchors, I realize they're worthless because it's rarely shallow enough to use them. And if it were, I doubt that they would actually work. It's much better just to carry a long rope and be able to tie up with people. If you're going to stop, just tie the jet skis together and hold on to them. Or go tie up with someone else. So that's one of those things that's like, okay, no one needs a jet ski anchor. Like, so this isn't like a good donation. Anyone that owns a jet ski doesn't need a free anchor. Also, it's worthless. Also, selling it would be a waste of my time because it would take me more time to sell it for like the $10 or $15 than it would just to trash it right now. So don't hate me. I throw shit away sometimes. I also think you should throw shit away too. But yeah, I think I've never read any of the minimalism books or really followed the minimalism movement. I mean, just hearing it, you kind of get an idea of what it is, but whatever it is, I'm sure I agree with it on some scale. Like, yeah, everybody has so much shit. It's so much easier just to get rid of a bunch of shit, and it just seems so much more stress-free. Not, you look around and there's not a bunch of garbage. You're like, what is this for? And then when you're organizing your house, you can put the things that are the tricky things, or the things that you need but are not often used. Those are the most annoying things. It's like, I can't throw this away. I can't get rid of this because I will need to use it, but I'll only need to use it once or twice a year, like camping gear, depending on how much you camp. But with that stuff, you can just get it all nice, organized boxes, because if you don't have a lot of shit, you have more storage than you need, which I love having more storage than you need. I hate, like, if you have to use every shelf, you have too much stuff. Just put all that stuff together, label it, you know exactly where it is. But anyway, speaking of Airbnbs and stuff like that, that stuff's been on my mind, and then I was randomly perusing around on YouTube, as we do, and I came across a channel called Robuilt, Robuilt, like Rob Built, 1B. And I liked his channel, and what he was, and I noticed his channel wasn't wildly popular. I'm glad YouTube recommended it to me, but it was about glamping and setting up glamping businesses. And I've seen this before because years ago, probably 5 years ago, maybe more, I stayed in El Cosmico, which is basically, it's a glamp ground. If you don't know what glamping is, it's glam, as in glamour, glamorous camping, glamping. And it involves usually having, much more amenities than you would expect at a campground. So ideally, for me to call, I don't know what the criteria is. I don't know if there's any hard criteria, but what I like to see in a glamping site is toilets. They don't have to be flushing toilets, but they need to be better than a porta potty, which means they're probably composting toilets that have ventilation. In composting toilets, they separate the poop from the pee. And in doing that, it doesn't create sewage. So I guess sewage is when the piss mixes with the poop, and that creates a horrible scent and causes what we call sewage. But if you separate the poop and the pee, and you dry the poop with a fan, which there's a fan built into some of these composting toilets, there's a wide range of pricing and how fancy they are. Some of them are more permanent solutions. Some of them are mobile solution for you to carry with you. But in glamping, you would typically have a more permanent solution. It would ideally have a fan in there. It separates the poop from the pee, dries the poop, vents that out, feet away from the toilet or up above, overhead the toilet, like an outhouse. And people claim that they don't really stink because they put stuff in there to make it not stink. And then by separating the liquids and the solids and drying the solids and venting it away from the building, you don't really get the smell. It's kind of just like pooping in a regular toilet, only you can't flush it. So, toilets, running water, ideally doesn't have to be, I don't know what the proper term is, like hard lined in or actually attached to, the water system. You could have, showers that are fed from water tanks using gravity to pressure instead of a pump to shower you. You can also get, what are the tankless hot water heaters that heat the water as it comes through the pipe. You can even get them solar powered. But anyway, you want showers, ideally hot, but I would still call it glamping if it was cold showers. And toilets, and then ideally AC and heat. Not every glamp ground has AC and heat, but I think that a good glamping site should. But what's fascinating about these glamping sites is that they can make a fuckload of money. These people with these yurts and tents and glamping sites can make as much money as a $400,000, $500,000 house in Austin. And the reason for that being is because typically glamping sites are located near national parks or some place that is a place you want to go. It's a getaway. It's an experience. You're not just getting a stay in a city. I mean, a stay in a city is an experience. You visit Austin not for the Airbnb. You visit Austin for Austin. The Airbnb is part of your experience. But with the glamping, the glamp ground is a larger part of your experience than I would say the house that you stay in if you're visiting Austin. And then, you're going to go visit a national park or whatever. And I think this is the next evolution of short-term rentals is glamping. And I think glamping is going to get bigger and bigger. And I think it's highly appealing because Yeah, so let's say you wanted to start a B&B type business in Austin, and you want to get, let's say you want 5 properties. Well, in Austin, I'm going to guess that's going to cost you an average of $500,000. So you're talking about $2.5 million there already. And I mean, it's not as if people that buy properties are paying $2.5 million out of pocket. I would assume that most of the people that are in Airbnb business have a decent amount of capital already, and they have a good credit score, and they probably get most of that on loans. Because, I mean, who the fuck is, well, how many people have $2.5 million cash? So let's say you're making $150, $200 a night on those properties. I mean, shit, you had to spend or get $2.5 million in loans, which you are paying monthly on, to make that money. And if you're doing glamping, you can fetch $150 a night. Some of these glamping sites can fetch way more than that. I've seen some of them getting $350, $400 a night, just for being next to a national park and having a pretty cool glamp site. You'd have to spend a lot of money to get that in Austin. And the overhead is just so low. So I thought this was fascinating. And, I've always been interested in passive income, and just kind of ways to keep making money. And just, I mean, I think the best way to do everything is kind of like always trying to knock out 2 birds in one stone. Like with the podcast, it could be a potential solid income stream one day, but at the very least, even if that doesn't work, it's fun, and it's kind of a good little, I don't know, like almost like a diary of kind of what I've been doing. Keeps me on track, keeps me thinking forward. I meet new people, I network with people. It has a lot of benefits. So even if, let's say the benefit set is like, could make money, and then all those other things, like not all of those things have to come true for it to be worth it. Like at the very least, it should be fun, which is why I'm doing this style episode, and which is why I'm probably going to I may mix things up even further in the future. I may even rebrand the podcast to something else, like, stuff like that. And nothing's set in stone. It's just kind of whatever keeps the ball rolling, whatever keeps it fun. But anyway, me looking at that, and then also I have gotten more and more interested in working with my hands and doing something in the physical world, because I've been in the virtual world for so long with software development. And it's like kind of, I think I've talked to a lot of people about this on the podcast. I mean, we all get into our careers or whatever, and you hit this like 7-year, 10-year mark, and a lot of things change. A lot of people can change their mind. Like what you thought was fun for you maybe isn't fun for you anymore. Maybe it will be later, but right now you need something different. And I think that just is like, I think that's just human nature. I mean, it's hard to do the same thing for so long and still get the same enjoyment out of it you got 7 to 10 years ago. And honestly, it just, when you look at it like that, it seems like the logical thing to think would be like, you shouldn't expect yourself to like something for 10 years. If you have found something that you like for 10 years, fuck yeah, good for you. I haven't yet. Hopefully one day I will. Maybe the thing that I like doing is changing what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It could be anything. So I thought that was really cool. And then I got into looking into it, and I'm like, okay, well, after doing some research, if you're going to start a glamping site, ideally it's somewhere you could drive to. Doesn't have to be a quick drive, but less than 1 day. You want to be able to get there, but you don't want to feel like you need to be there all the time. And I went out I've been to Marfa twice. I've been to Big Bend twice. I rode horses there each time. Marfa is in West Texas, as is Big Bend. And yeah, West Texas, I loved it. I thought it was fucking cool. And then I went there this last spring with a group of friends, and we went and stayed in Marfa again, this time not at El Cosmico, which is that glamping site I was talking about there. I think I got off track and didn't finish describing it, but that's what El Cosmico is. Bunch of trailers, stuff like that, and they've also got teepees with propane fire pits in them. El Cosmico is cool, honestly, but El Cosmico is an example of why I think that this still has a lot of room to grow because they appear to make very good money. And I don't think it's overly impressive. It's cool. There's nothing amazingly spectacular about it. And the cost to do this, you can spend a shitload of money. You can, but you don't have to. So I got to researching it. I drove down to Terlingua, which is right outside of Big Bend. It's that ghost town that people sometimes visit. It's a tourist attraction in itself. So when you go out to West Texas, you'll pass Fort Stockton, and some other places. You'll hit Alpine, which is the closest larger town to Big Bend. If you go directly south of Alpine, you'll hit Big Bend. I think it's about 45 minutes. No, actually, I think it's more like an hour. I'd have to Google it, but it's somewhere around an hour from Alpine. Now, Big Bend's out there. Terlingua is like 20 minutes from Big Bend. So it's like Alpine, Terlingua, Big Bend. But if you keep going west past Alpine, you'll hit Marfa, which is like a tiny little town. It's like a little artsy town. The population's super small. It's the only reason that town exists is because there was a military base there during World War II. And so people had to live there. Ever since World War II, you can look at the population of that town, Marfa, on Wikipedia, and is diminished. Like, at some point, no one will live there. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but like, it's a very small town, and it's cool for that reason. It's just kind of, I don't even know why it's cool. It's cool because people like going there. But then when you do go there, you're like, actually, this is cool. This is fun. It's super small. I can walk right down the street and go get a bite to eat and not wait. It's just kind of, you just kind of get away from everything, and you get that whole West Texas scenery, mountains, the Chisos Mountains and all that stuff are there. It's a different vibe. It does not feel like Central Texas at all. It looks totally different. The fact that we went on the horseback ride at Lajita Stables there, and the guy that was running the ride, he was like, yeah, like I've never been anywhere outside. Well, he's been outside of Texas, but he's never been anywhere in Texas but West Texas. He's like, can't imagine it looking any different than this. And I'm like, oh my God, this looks nothing like the Austin area. Anyway, I think West Texas is dope. It has like this cool desert-like vibe. The weather is more desert-like to where it's cooler at night, and it's still hot during the day, but it is cooler at night than it is here in Austin. Scenery is amazing. The sunsets are amazing. Some of the best stargazing I know in the United States, if not in the world, is down there at Big Bend, because it's like a dark sky zone to where they have actual ordinances about the amount of light you can put out. You can see the Milky Way there with the naked eye, which is kind of rare. So it has amazing stargazing. It's not that far away from Austin. I went down there to scope it out and look at some land that was for sale. I first went off on this little journey where I was looking at some land that was way off-road. And pretty soon after a couple miles of off-road, I realized this land is not viable for glamping. It's too far out. But I went down there with the intention to camp on the land, and I didn't have any place booked to stay. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to keep driving. But shit got really, really bad out there, even for my Jeep and four-wheel drive. I ended up even having to turn around after going through some nasty shit, because some of the stuff was so high clearance. I was risking getting stuck out there, and the sun was coming down. I didn't have anywhere to stay, and I was like 45 minutes out in the desert. So, and the dog was with me. I was like, it's probably a good idea to turn around here. So I turned around, and I had to blast back to Alpine till I could finally get reception. And then I had an Airbnb booked for the day after that night that I was supposed to camp. And I was quickly like scanning my phone, like to like modify my booking for the night before it got too late, because it was pushing like 10 o'clock at this point. And luckily the lady that was hosting the place accepted it right away. So I was like, okay, thank God I have somewhere to stay. I don't have to sleep in my fucking car or whatever, because there's not a lot out there. But that was just part of this journey that I had down there. This was like a couple weeks ago. And then I went back and I looked at some other pieces of land. I was like, okay, like remote's cool, but after looking at other glamp sites in the area, none of them, they were all right off the highway, which I was trying to avoid that. But after being down there, I realized, well, this highway is not very busy. Like, it's not even that busy during the day, let alone at night. Like, the only reason you'd be coming down this highway is if you're going to Terlingua or Big Bend from Alpine, or somewhere else, or all the way down to Big Bend. So, which means you're probably getting almost no night traffic and very little day traffic. And I found a piece of land that was right off the highway, half a mile off the highway. You can get to it with any car. You don't need four-wheel drive. And it's 20 acres. I really liked it. And I couldn't really hear the road that well. The wind was pretty bad. And I imagine the wind is going to stay that bad, but it wasn't so bad that I'd be like, I can't camp here. And I scoped it out, and talked to the people selling it and talked to some locals about some different things. And I decided to buy that land. It's 20 acres. So I've got 20 acres now. It's on your way to Big Bend. It's 45 minutes past Alpine, probably 30 minutes from Big Bend entrance, which that might sound like a lot, but if you've been down there, like 30 minutes from Big Bend is nothing. Like there's nothing over there. The only closer you could get is Terlingua. You could get 6 miles, 10 miles from the entrance. But at that point, it's like, 30-minute drive in the national park to me is no big deal. Also, I think the benefit of being a little closer to Alpine, to where you're like 45 minutes from Alpine, if you want to go to Alpine, you can. You could even go to Marfa and check it out. Like you could stay at the glamp ground that I want to build out there on that 20 acres. You can either go to Big Bend, Alpine, or Marfa. It's kind of like somewhat of a nice center point, closer to Big Bend than anything else, but you could still visit those other places. Whereas if you're right there in Terlingua, you're not really want to go to Marfa. You're not really going to want to go to Alpine unless you need to. So I bought that land down there, and I booked an Airbnb for August 3rd to the 17th in Alpine, 2 weeks. I'm going to go down there for 2 weeks. I'm going to try to build a glamp ground. Oh, I'm not going to finish it in 2 weeks, but I'm going to try to get 2 cabins put up, and I'm going to try to build these pretty much myself. I mean, I've got some friends that said they would. One of my friends, Abe, he said he'd come down and just help me for shits and gigs or whatever, because he likes building shit and he's an engineer. Told him he could come stay for free. And then I got my other friend, Dave. He builds stuff all the time. He's really busy, so he's having a hard time finding a time to get down there, but hopefully he can. But gonna rent a skid steer, build some roads first. Not gonna pave them. You don't need to pave them. Just gonna get that top layer of dirt off. It's really soft top layer of dirt, and there's a hard layer below that. It would make a good road. Kind of like plan it and zone it out, and then start the first 2 cabins. Finish one of them, sleep in that one, leave the Airbnb. So I have 2 weeks to finish one cabin, or I'll have to extend my Airbnb, or I'll just have to camp on the ground with no AC or no AC, which is going to be in the hundreds. And it's going to be pretty warm at night too. So I'd like to avoid that if I can. But I also don't want to spend too much money on Airbnbs down there. But on that note, like part of the reason I got my house set up for Airbnb for this trip was because I knew I was going to be down there. So it's just nice. It's like, it kind of really actually, the Airbnb that down there is basically going to be free because I already have 2 bookings here. But still, I don't want to unnecessarily extend that Airbnb. I want to start staying on my land and getting that going. So yeah, this is going to be a totally different kind of project for me. Honestly, I did construction when I was younger. I did a lot of landscaping, and I did help a guy that I worked for that was a really hard-ass guy to work for, but I respected him a lot. He was an ex-Marine dude. They owned a construction company. They did precast construction. I helped him with a little home remodeling, but not a lot. And I would like sometimes mix concrete and even patch some shit. So I'm like going back. I'm like, okay, like this stuff, I was like 16 to 21 when I was doing this stuff. And I do remember some of it, but it wasn't all totally relevant to this. I didn't really do any woodworking. I helped make some cabinets. Well, I helped sand cabinets for the most part. He made the cabinets. The sanding part was the shitty fucking job, but. And the precast construction is those huge warehouses where you need a crane that's lifting like, I don't know how many tons these panels are. They're pretty heavy, but thousands of pounds. So it's not like you're building big shit, but like you're small. Like I would get up on this huge flatbed semi truck that had this, so many 1,000-pound panel on it, and the crane would lower the chains down to me, and I would hook it up, jump off. The crane lifts it, sets it vertical, and we're talking something that's probably 30 feet wide, maybe 20, 30 feet wide, and like, I don't know, 16 inches thick. Big old concrete panel. It's like probably, I don't know, 60, I have to guess. This is a wild guess. I want to say 60 feet tall. These are giant warehouses. And what they do is they pour these concrete, huge pieces of wall at a warehouse, and then they ship them in pieces, and you put them together like Legos out on the job site. And then when they set a piece, you have to hammer these. They have these arms in them, these braces in them, iron braces. You hammer the pins out, you pull the braces down after the crane sets it, and you use a bar to set it in, get it all level. There's a guy with a laser level. You got to shim it, get it just right. Pop the braces down. You pin the braces to these bolts that we've already put in the ground. Well, before all this, you have to go around the whole job site, and someone takes an auger off a skid steer and drills these big old holes we call dead men. And then you pour concrete in those holes. You put a bolt in those, and you let all that set. Then you put the panels, take the brace, lower it down, connect it with that bolt that you put in the ground to keep it upright. And then dudes go and weld steel between the panels. And you do the whole building like that. And there's a whole bunch of concrete panels and all these steel braces coming down. And then the iron workers put the roof on. And the iron workers, man, they're crazy. They walk around on those iron roofs with, like, if they fell off, they were dead. And they're up there welding shit. You'll be walking around. That's sparks burning your shirt if you're not careful. If the iron workers are still working while you're there or started working, sometimes they're working on part of the building while you're doing the rest of it. But once they get the roof on, that gives it more stability. And then you go through and you have to go through all those panels and take an impact drill and unbolt all those braces and haul them off. And then you got a warehouse. Well, after the people caulk and seal the gaps between the panels. And then you pretty much got a warehouse. But see, that stuff's not really applicable to building cabins. It's like big construction. You don't really need to know much to do it. You're just got to be like, hey, hook this up, set this there, blah, blah, blah. Hey, everyone. This is your host, Justin. I just wanted to thank everyone for listening and give those that are new to the podcast a reminder to please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. If you're on YouTube, please like the video, share it with a friend. That helps us out. Thank you. But anyway, did a lot of hard work like that when I was younger, and did help him. He had this big country house. He was remodeling the whole damn thing because like, he's the kind of guy that his wife's like, hey, like, can you be done working? Like, we have a family. But he just working his ass off all the time, like morning to night. Couldn't stop working, which I think is good. I think that's a good thing to have in a person. But I do think that a line needs to be drawn. It's like, you need to know when to quit. Like, go in, like, if you want a family and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Like, you do need to draw a line somewhere. Like, you got a lot done. Be happy with what you got done. Go in, chill. But anyway, he was a cool dude. Hard to work for sometimes, but anyway, it's like, I haven't done any cabin building, but it's like, I've done enough labor type stuff that I'm like, I don't think it, would be too crazy. And then as I researched it more, I've watched hours of people building sheds and cabins on YouTube and reading about it. And a lot of them say like, hey, anybody could do this. And after watching the video, it's like, yeah, anybody could do this, really. I mean, it's going to take some trial and error and some effort, but I'm basically going to try to do all this shit myself for the most part. I'm going to pimp out these cabins the best I can within a budget. I don't have a crazy budget to go. Going to try to cash out, refi my house to get some extra money for it. I don't know that I'm going to need that money, but with all the appreciation of all this shit since COVID, I'm like, it wouldn't hurt to do a refi right now. My payment would basically be the same, plus the equity that I've gotten in the house over the last 2 years is just stupid high. Like, so why not take some of that out and keep it in the reserves in case I get to a point where I'm in this project and I'm like, yeah, I could use some extra money. And I don't want to feel too pinched and like do anything too cheap. I don't want to like necessarily have a bunch of money to waste it, but I don't want to be in a position where things are so tight that things end up not good. Or maybe I get in a position where I bit off a little more than I could chew and I need to get someone else in there, stuff like that. Anyway, I'm super excited about it. Think I'm going to call it Starlight Sanctuary. Not sure. There's a lot more to be talked about here. I didn't necessarily know I was definitely going to talk about this, but with the format of this episode, why not? I mean, that's what's been going on, and that's kind of why I've been so busy lately too, and why I don't have a guest right now. And I'm going to be going out there soon, so that's why I also need to change up the format of the podcast, because I need to keep it going, but I don't really have time to build up this huge backlog. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep doing an episode every week of some format, and maybe it'll just be like, hey, here's what's going on in Terlingua right now. Because, I mean, it fits within the realm of the podcast. The podcast is about entrepreneurship. It's kind of what it's turned into and kind of what I'm embracing. You know what I mean? The podcast is about interesting people and people trying to, I don't know, do some fun shit with their lives and kind of get what Clayton Boone, one of the people on the podcast, the financial advisor, said, get vocational freedom. I mean, that's what I want. You know what I mean? Like, I've got some things going, but things can fall apart at any time. I mean, I'm not done, like I can't retire right now. And if something goes south, I mean, I'm gonna have to get another W-2 job ASAP. But I want to build up some more other ways to make some money and kind of diversify my income streams and not have all of them rely on software. I think this would be a great way to have something that doesn't rely on software. But it's one of those things. It's like you go out there and you spend a lot of money. I mean, you can do research. Like I've done research. I mean, you could research yourself to death and you're never going to get a guarantee. Like you're going to get like, hey, people are doing this. You can pretty well using certain tools online, find out how much they're making and how often they're booking. Like AirDNA is a good tool for that. You can get paid reports on areas and they'll tell you what their opinion is from an A to F rating on the investment opportunity there. And then they can also show you they can scan Airbnb for how often these listings are booking and they can basically tell you the revenue. To me, what looks like very accurately. I mean, all you have to do is know what they're charging per night and how often they're booked, which is public information on their calendar on Airbnb. So if you just scrape that and do some math, you know how much they're making. So people are doing it. I think it's going to grow. I think that Big Bend is not the most national. It's no Yellowstone. You know what I mean? Like Yellowstone's traffic is, I don't know, probably 3x, 4x, maybe more than that of Big Bend's traffic. But Big Bend's foot traffic has gone up every year for the past X years. I don't know how many, but Big Bend is growing in popularity. National parks are growing in popularity a lot before COVID, and COVID again is one of those things that accelerated it. I think that experiences are the new Airbnb. I think that people want to go out and do shit and have experiences in their life. And I think that people are going to own less shit outside of being outside of investment. Like I want to own more shit to make it an investment, opportunity, not to own it for the sake of owning it. And I think that that's the general trend. I just get the vibe that that's the general trend. People are going to want to travel more, do more, have more experiences, own less stuff, rent more. And honestly, a lot of people are going to have to rent more just because shit is getting so expensive. But that's what's going on. I think there was a couple of things else I wanted to talk about, but I don't know. This has all kind of been on the fly. Anyway, let me know. Leave a comment. I know more people listen to this podcast than comment, and I appreciate those of you. I really do appreciate those of you that do comment when you do, because otherwise it kind of feels like you're talking to air. And it's just good to know that people are engaged and they're liking what you're putting out. So if you have any questions about what I'm talking about here, you have something is there something that you're working on that is trying to build yourself some passive income? How do you feel about maybe doing some more episodes like this? Stuff like that. Just leave a comment. This one, I wasn't even going to put this one on YouTube. Well, if this one's on YouTube, leave a comment. But if it does come out on YouTube, it's not going to be tomorrow. I'm recording this. This is 10:50 p.m., July 26th. I just got back yesterday, and I didn't even stay at my house yesterday because the Airbnb people were still in here. And here's the thing about Airbnb. I was a little worried about doing it because I live here. If this was purely an investment property to me, I would still care. I mean, if I own the place, yeah, I want it to be nice and I want people to break shit because I don't pay for it. But there's a particular level of care when you live there. And it wasn't too bad. Honestly, I think that it could have been better. Like there was 2 groups. Nothing is broken. I'm pretty sure that a dog definitely pooped here. I'm no longer allowing pets after this. And they didn't even do that good. Like, obviously there was not literally poop when I walked in here, but like I saw some brown spots on the carpet. And it was, what else could it have been but poop? It was probably poop. So I cleaned it up and I got steam cleaners coming in, which I charge a pet fee for that reason. Like in case you need to use it, now I'm getting the carpet steamed. But that's one of those things. If you're going to Airbnb your own property and you go through all the effort to do it, just know that you are going to get some wear and tear. But honestly, I don't have that much stuff and I don't have that much expensive stuff here, really, honestly. People might think that I do, but I don't. The most expensive stuff I have here is my guitars, and those go missing. I'm definitely going to know. And you're insured on Airbnb. Like tables, furniture, couches, like I'm not too worried about that stuff. I certainly don't want them broken. But again, I mean, I don't know exactly how it works out. Like, say someone breaks a table or like burns a hole in your couch, even though they're not supposed to be smoking inside or whatever. I don't know exactly how that works out. Like, do I charge them and then, or does Airbnb pay me? Whatever. But I'm pretty confident that anything that would happen would get paid for. And also, people do have reviews and stuff like that. But yeah, there was like some poop on the ground. I cleaned it up. It's like, damn. I mean, if I stayed at someone's house and my dog pooped on the ground, like the owner surely would not know that it happened by the time they got home. Like I would have. It doesn't take much effort to clean that up to where it's like not noticeable. That's surprising to me. And then the second people, they just left the kitchen. I literally had to scrub the kitchen counter with dish soap. There was stuff plastered all over. I don't know what the fuck they had all over the kitchen counter. It was insane. And then they left the entire sink full of dishes, even though the dishwasher was empty. There was one dirty dish in it, but all the dirty dishes other than that dish were in the sink. And then there was like a muffin wrapper and the garbage disposal. I had to reach my hand down in there and get it out. But it wasn't that big of a deal. And I mean, from now on, like I was just trying to not eat that cleaning fee for like cleaning before I got home. I was like, I'll come home and I'll just clean it myself. Cause honestly, how dirty can they be? Cause when I go places, I'm really clean, but it's what you get for trying to think that everyone acts in the same way you do. I'll just play the cleaners to come again. So when I come home, I won't know actually how filthy it was. That way I don't have to think about it. And I'm not going to do Airbnb here that much. I just know that I'm going to be in and out of West Texas lately, and it would just be a waste of money for me for this house to be sitting empty. And that covers some of my expenses down there and helps fund the project a little more. But yeah, thanks for listening again. Leave a comment on Instagram or wherever. This one is not video because I feel weird when I'm doing this solo episode, just kind of staring at a camera. I feel like it flows a lot better and I'm more myself if I'm doing an audio only. If I'm doing a solo episode, it's probably just going to be audio only just because I'm more comfortable talking, not towards the camera. I know the video is a little more engaging, but whatever. Hope you guys have a good week and follow along. I actually, you know what? I might even be starting a separate channel for the glamping thing. And I'm not totally sure I'm going to do this because it adds a lot more work than the work that's already being done. Like you have the work of building it, then you have the work of like videoing yourself building it, and then getting someone to edit the video or editing it yourself. It adds so much more work, and I already know this is going to be a lot of work. At the very least, I'll have pictures and maybe I'll talk about updates, but there's a good chance I will video a lot of the build, and I might even I'll probably put that on a separate channel. And then for friends in Austin, I'll just likely post little weekly audio updates like this and be like, if you want to check out the full video, check this out. I do have at least one recording next week. So there's going to be another, like your standard traditional Friends in Austin episode coming out soon, but pretty soon here, you're going to see more of what's going on in Terlingua. Because I can't do both at the same time, but I want to keep the podcast going. So that's how it's going to be. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys later.